Okay, welcome back. We're on page 863 talking about how when you start adding, plugins, well, then you're going to have some issues. For example, you may have heard of the Equifax story where they had a web page and they were using a particular component that had a security flaw in it, and they thought they were good and perfectly secure because they were using all the best practices, and because one piece had expired, so to speak, and had been replaced with a new one which they didn't know about, that people were able to get in and steal a bunch of information. So plug-in modules, yeah, that's a big issue. You got to be on top of it. And so the web development environment, there's a thing called WebDAV, web distributed authoring and versioning. I typically don't use that. I don't turn on WebDAV on my stuff, but you could. You could use FTP to transfer files. Yeah, you could. I use SSH, secure SSH file transfer protocol, basically a secure thing. And that's how I update my files on my servers. Okay, on page 863, they talk about some of the things, the framework, remember, the plugin. Directory traversal. Do I allow my users to, go to a directory on their own without having to type, the whole thing? They just type .. to go up, and or to give a directory name and go down. Can they do that on their own? Most websites, if you tried that, they would come back and say, "What the heck are you doing?" No, we're not going to allow that. You have to follow the links. You can't just poke around on your own. If there's not a link going to that directory, you can't get to that directory. Okay. Form fields, if you have a login page, or maybe you're an order form, where you have a bunch of fields you have to fill in. Often, in the old days, some people would cheat and they would put a hidden field in there. Like, I don't know, let's say I'm ordering something. And so down at the bottom, they would have a hidden field for a discount code. You couldn't see it. But if I was to go in there and say I wanted to view all the source inside my browser, I could see that hidden field. I could change that to 10% and then switch back and hit submit. And woohoo, I'd be getting a 10% discount on my order because you exposed a field and you just assume I wasn't smart enough to figure out where it was and make a change to it. So that's pretty dumb. That's one of the easiest things for the security suites to find, so don't worry about that. SQL injection. So SQL injection is about, I can type in something in a web page that I know is going to be submitted to a browser and I can break it. So here's a little comic that talks about this. I love this one. Calling in from the school. Did you do something? Well, yeah. Did you really name your son Robert single quote drop table students? Why, yes, we call him by. So what this basically is when somebody is going to be entering your stuff into a database, you can, instead of entering your name, you can enter your name and you can enter some SQL statement. So in theory, like for example, let's say that they wanted you use your name and password to see if you have access to the system. Well, I could just add some extra stuff in there that guarantees that no matter what I type for my name and my password, I'd automatically get in. SQL injection. And if you take the SQL course, they'll tell you exactly about how to undo this. Application security. So isolate the web server both physically and logically. It should be a firewall between that and the internet and a firewall between that and the rest of your systems, okay? Input validation. That's basically what this is all about. Don't let people enter junk. If you're asking for the age and they type in hello, then you need to have it come back and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept this until you type in a proper date or a proper age or a proper whatever. Data access. Remember the principles of least privilege. Don't write your web page so that it has to have an administrator rights to be able to get to some database or some component. That would be really bad. It ought to be read-only to the database most of the time. I mean, I could see if it was an order system, no. Authentication and authorization, that's what a lot of people do now with Azure. They put their accounts out on the cloud, and therefore you can do authentication anywhere, everywhere. It can be integrated with Windows so that on the LAN, it won't prompt you for your credentials. It'll just use your cached credentials on your machine, not from the internet. Can't do that over the internet. But inside your LAN, if, for example, you're in the security group, so you get an extra link on the very web page that everyone else in the company goes to. You get an extra one that no one else gets to see. Okay, that's how that works. And then logging, track everything, right? Absolutely everything. So content management, 866. So a lot of companies, for example, will put together a package for you because this is software as a service, right? And so they're installing the server, and you don't get to log in, you don't get to reboot. They're installing IIS or Apache, so you don't get to mess with that. All you're messing with is content. And so there needs to be some sort of automated content management system that allows them to go in and add a page or change a page or edit a page, because you don't really expect them to know too much about the web, right? So that's what that's about. Content management system. There's one that I use called Solid CP. That's the one that my vendor uses. It's pretty good. So it's all about updating content. Sure, you can change the structure, and you can make a few little changes, right? That's fine. Okay, so you could have multiple websites in your organization for this. Well, multiple. Let me start over. Multiple versions of the same website. For example, in my work experience, we had a development web page, and then it had to go to somebody and to look at it. It even went to the legal department before they said, okay, so technical, you're not doing anything stupid. Security, no, you're not creating a hole. And legal, yes, everything in here is legit. And then after everyone says yes, then you can move it from the development to the production web server. Okay, so that's a typical thing. So you could have 3 gates, a development, QA, security, legal, and then production. Okay. All right, we have reached the end of this chapter, and I'll see you guys again in the next chapter.